Hello, 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 and welcome back to Voices of Empowerment with Dr. B. I am your host, Dr. Bianca Miss B. Lee. I am a licensed practicing personal counselor. I am also a marriage and family counselor, therapist. I am a master life and purpose coach 5 time. I'm a spiritual coach and mother and mentor and things like that. And I'm here to journey with you through this time, this reading, this material that we have. If you're familiar with the platform, then you know that we read through different pieces of material, brilliant pieces of material that is edifying to our spirit, our souls, our minds, our healing to our hearts, to our forward movement, to releasing of the past, the old, and all of those things. It's a journey to betterment, a journey to through transformation, through elevation, through expansion, through remembering, okay, to remembering rather. And I'm excited to be on this journey with you. None of these books I have pre-read prior to you. So this journey is a real-time journey that I am taking right along with you all. And I am absolutely elated to do so. It is a pleasure. It is an honor to be able to journey with you and then lead the course, while also learning beside you and really kind of delineating and going through the process with you, learning and expanding and sharing insights and whatnot. I thank everyone for being here, wherever you're viewing from, whether you're watching the live or the replay. I thank you for your presence. I really, really do. We are airing live on several platforms. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse. We're everywhere right now. And so, from wherever you're viewing from, I thank you so very much for being here with us. Even if you're just listening in and not engaging, it's perfectly fine. If you want to hear it as an audible, it's perfectly fine. Like a podcast, it's all fine. Okay. But if you want to engage, please feel free to do so. That's what the chat and the comment section is there for you to utilize and share your thoughts, your feelings, because you never know. Someone on another platform can actually, resonate with your insight, and it can give them more of a deeper look into something that they may have a question about. So you may be helping them. That's what we're here to do. We are here to hold each other hand, walking each other back home to our most sacred, most divine, highest self. Okay, truest, authentic self. All right. All right. Now, with that being said, what book are we reading? We are reading through the amazing book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, written by the beautiful Isabel Wilkerson. This book is a New York Times bestseller list. This is also one of Oprah's best reads. This is part of her book club. It has won so many different awards. And if you follow my social media platforms, when I promote and market this particular gathering, I've listed all of the awards that this book has achieved so far. Okay, so far being the operative words, but it's a reason for it because it really, really, really breaks down again the origins of our discontent, the origins of where this poison called separation and division came from, called segregation and all of this stuff. When did it begin? How did it begin? And how is it still here and prevalent? Because it is, the last time that we were together, I read through the section where she highlighted 2016. She highlighted when Trump was first, campaigning and in office and things like that, and how it seemed as if him being in the highest point of power here in the Western civilization, it kind of unlocked a cove of hidden people with hidden agendas and their true selves coming to the forefront. And it was like, oh my God, what is all of this vitriol that we're experiencing from said sector of people? Well, it's not something that was new. We've seen remnants of it over the years. Although we are, gratefully so, and I give all praise and honor to those who had to go through segregation and slavery and Jim Crow and all of those times, the Tulsa massacres and all of those times. We have our ancestors that's gone through all of this stuff. And I'm talking about not even long ago ancestors. I'm talking about like at the level of grandparent, great grandparent. That's not long ago, you know? And um to just imagine, because they're wiping away our history, trying to anyway, but what they cannot wipe away is molecular structure and how our history is ingrained in our blood. You cannot take away the blood, therefore you can't take away the history. You can destroy books, sure. You can destroy statues, yes, absolutely, monuments and buildings and all of that, but you cannot destroy DNA. You can't destroy bloodline, blood. You cannot destroy that. So my ancestors and the story of our blood will remain in me and through me. So, good try, but whatever. It's not going to work. This book actually has a movie depicted of it. It's called Origins. Amazing movie. Amazing movie. Usually, typically, I read the book before I watch the movie. The movie will have you having real conversations. The movie. So you can imagine, and you always know that the book is always better than the movie. The movie will have you really asking questions. And I believe this movie was, if I'm not mistaken, it was directed by Ava DuVernay, which is one of my favorite Black directors and producers, along with Ryan Coogler. Which brings me to why we were not together Tuesday, I purposefully canceled all of my platforms, all of my segments, to go and watch the movie Sinners, written and directed by Ryan Coogler, starring the amazing Michael B. Jordan. When I tell you there is no greater time than now to be a revolutionary. Well, we've had revolutionaries in the past who have done amazing work, and we're standing on the shoulders of them. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, the revolution is absolutely being televised in the most creative way. This movie here, and we're gonna break down these things on TikTok. If you follow me, go to TikTok. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have a segment called The Talk with Doc. Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, we are going to really, really dissect the symbolism and the messaging inside of the movie Sinners, the powerful symbolism and the powerful messaging inside of the movie Sinners. We're going to do that on The Talk with Doc, Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on TikTok, okay? You want all of my information on how to find me there is in the captions. It's always under my name, Dr. Bianca Miss B. Lee, on any platform. But you want to join me there. I promise you do. Okay. This movie here was 100% on the same level as the Kendrick Lamar halftime performance. It was, to some, entertainment, and to others, it was messages in plain sight, which is the way our ancestors moved. It was wisdom and messaging and reminders in plain sight. This is how the power will be shifted back to the hands of the people. The revolution is 100% being televised. I'm an astrologer. So right now, actually, Pluto entered Aquarius the week after the election tally was made in November of 2024, where it shall remain for the next 25, 30 years. Every time in history when Pluto entered Aquarius, Aquarius being the sign of liberation, the people, community, freedom, revolution, technology, Pluto being the planet of transformation, shifts, changes, expansions, upgrades, undoing of. Every time historically Pluto entered Aquarius, there was always a revolution. And it was always the people overthrowing the quote unquote powers that be and regaining their power the righteous way. And man, oh man, oh man, oh man, it is being done so eloquently, so beautifully, and there doesn't have to be any bloodshed to do so. The innovation of creativity. I absolutely love it. So I think it's just perfect timing for us to really, really, really go into this book, because while the revolution is playing out, and things like DEI being, trampled over, and Roe versus Wade being overthrown, and again, our history, the history of the diaspora and of African Americans, Native Americans, and indigenous people being wiped away. The names of our ancestors being written in the logs of history, and all of these things. Oh my goodness. It's perfect timing that we're reading this book. I'm always led, man. I'm always led. I never know what book we're going to go into. And if you follow, then you know that the book that we were going to be reading is A Course in Miracles, which right before we started this book here, we started and was about to begin a Course in Miracles. I got quickly, no, go to this one first, and then A Course in Miracles, because A Course in Miracles is going to show us how to spiritually speaking, really, 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 really heal from these things, the origins of our discontents. We cannot ever, 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 ever heal what we refuse to reveal. We gotta reveal it. You gotta confront it. You gotta look it straight in the eye. You gotta call it what it is. You have to, in order to do something about it. And that's what we're here to do. Caste is actually highlighting the problem, the origins of the problem. And of course, the miracles is going to help us heal that. Okay. So it's beautifully orchestrated. And I thank Spirit for taking us in this way. Okay. We're reading today through chapters. It's still part 1, but chapters 2 and 3. Chapter 2 is An Old House and an Infrared Light. And then chapter 3 is An American Untouchable. Okay. So at any point, like I said, if you have anything to add and you want to add in the comments and things like that, please feel free to do so. That's what it's there for. If you want to just give a feedback or whatever, say hello, perfectly fine. I'm going to be reading the book. However, periodically I'm going to be looking back to the chat and things like that to see if anyone has commented or whatever, and I'm going to give you your just due and put your comment on the screen, or even give voice to your words. Okay, that way I don't, no one is missed. I don't like to miss anybody. Okay, because I'm grateful for everyone who comes and shares this space with us. Okay, in the meantime and in between time, I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's reading. Again, this is Caste, the Origins of Our Discontent, Part 1, Chapter 2, An Old House and an Infrared Light. The inspector trained his infrared lens onto a misshapen bowl in the ceiling, an invisible beam of light searching the layers of lath to test what the eye could not see. This house had been built generations ago, and I hadn't noticed the slightest welt in a corner of plaster in a spare bedroom, and had chalked it up to idiosyncrasy. Over time, the welt in the ceiling became a wave that widened and bulged despite the new roof. It had been building beyond perception for years. An old house is its own kind of devotional, a dowerage aunt with a story to be coaxed out of her, a mystery, a series of interlocking puzzles awaiting solution. Why is this soffit tucked into the southeast corner of an eave? What is behind this discolored patch of brick? With an old house, the work is never done, and you don't expect it to be. America is an old house. We can never declare the work over. Wind, flood, drought, and human upheavals batter a structure that is already fighting whatever flaws were left unattended in the original foundation. When you live in an old house, you may not want to go into the basement after a storm to see what the rain has wrought. Choose not to look, however, at your own peril. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester whether you choose to look or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. That's key. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of an inaction. Whatever you are wishing away will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you would rather not see. We in the developed world are like homeowners who inherited a house on a piece of land that is beautiful on the outside, but whose soil is unstable loam and rock, heaving and contracting over generations. Cracks patched, but the deeper ruptures waved away for decades, centuries even. Many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bold walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or jousts, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is, in fact, on our hands. Unaddressed, the ruptures and diagonal cracks will not fix themselves. The toxins will not go away, but rather will spread, leach, and mutate as they already have. When people live in an old house, they come to adjust to the idiosyncrasies and outright dangers sulking in an old structure. They put buckets under a wet ceiling, prop up groaning floors, learn to step over that rotting wood tread in the staircase. The awkward becomes acceptable, and the unacceptable becomes merely inconvenient. Live with it long enough, and the unthinkable becomes normal. Exposed over the generations, we learn to believe that the incomprehensible is the way that life is supposed to be. Come on, that is what we call cognitive dissonance, okay? Choosing not to see a better way when a better way is right there. The inspector was facing the mystery of the misshapen ceiling, and so he first held a sensor to the surface to detect if it was damp. The reading inconclusive. He then pulled out the infrared camera to take a kind of x-ray of whatever was going on. The idea being that you cannot fix a problem until and unless you can see it. Listen, what did I say? You can't heal what you refuse to reveal. She just stated here, the idea being that you cannot fix a problem until and unless you can see it. He could now see past the plaster, beyond what had been wallpapered or painted over, and we now are called upon to do in the house we all live in, to examine a structure built long ago. Like other old houses, America has an unseen skeleton, a caste system that is as central to its operation as are the studs and jousts that we cannot see in the physical buildings we call home. Caste is the infrastructure of our divisions. It is the architecture of human hierarchy, the subconscious code of instructions for maintaining, in our case, a 400-year-old social order. Looking at caste is like holding the country's x-ray up to the light. A caste system is an artificial construction, a fixed and embedded ranking of human value that sets the presumed supremacy of one group against the presumed inferiority of other groups on the basis of ancestry and often immutable traits that would be neutral in the abstract but are ascribed life and death meaning in a hierarchy favoring the dominant caste whose forebears designed it. A caste system uses rigid, often arbitrary boundaries to keep the ranked groupings apart, distinct from one another and in their assigned places. Throughout human history, three caste systems have stood out. The tragically accelerated, chilling, and officially vanquished caste system of Nazi Germany, the lingering, millennia-long caste systems of India, and the shape-shifting, unspoken, race-based caste pyramid in the United States. Each version relied on stigmatizing those deemed inferior to justify the dehumanization necessary to keep the lowest ranking people at the bottom and to rationalize the protocols of reinforcement. A caste system endures often because it often justifies as divine will, originating from sacred texts or the presumed laws of nature, reinforced throughout the culture and passed down through the generations. As we go about our daily lives, caste is the wordless usher in a darkened theater, flashlight cast down in the aisles, guiding us to our assigned seats for a performance. The hierarchy of caste is not about feelings or morality, it's about power. Which groups have it and which do not. See, we just finished talking about artificial power versus authentic power in The Seat of the Soul, written by Gary Zukov. We just finished talking about that. That was the last book we just read. Okay. It is about power, which groups have it and which do not. It is about resources, which caste is seen as worthy of them and which are not. Who gets to acquire and control them and who does not. It is about respect, authority, and assumptions of competence, who is accorded these and who is not. As a means of assigning value to entire swaths of humankind, caste guides each of us often beyond the reaches of our awareness. It embeds into our bones an unconscious ranking of human characteristics and sets forth the rules, expectations, and stereotypes that have been used to justify brutalities against entire groups within our species. In the American caste system, the signal of rank is what we call race, the division of humans on the basis of their appearance. In America, race is the primary tool and the visible decoy, the front man for caste. Race does the heavy lifting for a caste system that demands a means of human division. If we have been trained to see humans in the language of race, then caste is the underlying grammar that we encode as children. As when learning our mother tongue, caste, like grammar, becomes an invisible guide not only to how we speak, but how we process information. The autonomic calculations that figure into a sentence without our having to think about it. Many of us have never taken a class in grammar, yet we know in our bones that a transitive verb takes an object, that a subject needs a predicate. We know without thinking the difference between third person singular and third person plural. We may mention race referring to people as black or white or Latino or Asian or indigenous, when what lies beneath each label is centuries of history and assigning of assumptions and values to physical features in a structure of human hierarchy. What people look like, or rather the race they have been assigned or are perceived to belong to, is the visible cue to their caste. It is the historic flashcard to the public of how they are to be treated, where they are expected to live, what kinds of positions they are expected to hold, whether they belong in this section of town or that seat in a boardroom, whether they should be expected to speak with authority on this or that subject, whether they will be administered pain relief in a hospital, whether their neighborhood is likely to adjoin a toxic waste site or to have contaminated water flowing through their taps, whether they are more or less likely to survive childbirth in the most advanced nation in the world, whether they may be shot by authorities with impunity. We know that the letters of the alphabet are neutral and meaningless until they are combined to make a word which itself has no significance until it is inserted into a sentence and interpreted by those who speak it. In the same way that black and white were applied to people who were literally neither, but rather gradations of brown and beige and ivory, the caste system sets people at poles from one another and attaches meaning to the extremes and to the gradations in between, and then reinforces those meanings, replicates them in the roles each caste was and is assigned and permitted or required to perform. Man, that is so true. Caste and race are neither synonyms nor mutually exclusive. They can and do coexist in the same culture and serve to reinforce each other. Race in the United States is the visible agent of the unseen force of caste. Caste is the bones, race, the skin. Race is what we can see, the physical traits that have been given arbitrary meaning and became shorthand for who a person is. Caste is the powerful infrastructure that holds each group in its place. Caste is fixed and rigid. Race is fluid and superficial, subject to periodic redefinition to meet the needs of the dominant caste in what is now the United States. While the requirements to qualify as white have changed over centuries, the fact of a dominant caste has remained constant from its inception. Whoever fit the definition of white at whatever point in history was granted the legal rights and privileges of the dominant caste. Perhaps more critically and tragically, at the other end of the ladder, the subordinated caste, too, has been fixed from the beginning as the psychological floor beneath which all other castes cannot fall. Thus, we are all born into a silent war game, centuries old, enlisted in teams not of our own choosing. The side to which we are assigned in the American system of categorizing people is proclaimed by the team uniform that each caste wears, signaling our presumed worth and potential. That any of us manages to create abiding connections across these manufactured divisions is a testament to the beauty of the human spirit. The use of inherited physical characteristics to differentiate inner abilities and group value may be the cleverest way that a culture has ever devised to manage and maintain a caste system. As a social and human division, wrote the political scientist Andrew Hacker of the use of physical traits to form human categories, it surpasses all others, even gender, in intensity and subordination. Wow, 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 wow. Oh my goodness, that is so crazy, but that is so real. And it's been that way since we were forced, and since the Native Americans were forced and massacred and colonized. Okay, and then since the Africans or even other cultures were taken over and forced to comply and to be put in these categories that man has made up. And they said it, they gauged it, they set the measurements, the measuring stick to who gets what, who's classified as what. Even back in enslaved times, they saw the enslaved people as one third of a human being. Why? Because they said so. And it carried out, and that's what it was. To the point where it made documents, it made, you know, it was written in laws and bills and all of those things. Are you kidding me? And this has been the way because they say so. That's how it is, and that's how it's going to be. And unfortunately, whether we realize it or not, we have lived as though we have aligned with it almost. We've lived as though, well, we got to stay in our place. That's literally slave mentality. Talking like, walking like, accepting the fact that, this person said no, or that group of people said no. So, oh, well, I mean, that they said I can't. So, what? We've even believed it. And we walk and talk and see and move like passive, very passive, because we don't know who we are. That's what it is. And we've taken on the belief of what they've told us we were for centuries. For centuries. My goodness. Oh, like she stated, it may not have been us in Jim Crow. It may not have been our parents in the fields. It may not have been our grandparents or whatever the case, because in my case, yes, it was. My grandparents were sharecroppers. Okay. Their parents enslaved. Their grandparents enslaved. And so forth and so on. So it wasn't that long ago. So a lot of this mentality was passed down because that was what back then they were forced to take in and see and believe about themselves, and over the years have passed it to their children and so forth and so on. And now we're getting it. Man, This is why this stuff has to be broken, because it will continue to perpetuate throughout generations until somebody stops it. Part 1, Chapter 3, An American Untouchable. In the winter of 1959, after leading the Montgomery bus boycott that arose from the arrest of Rosa Parks, and before the trials and triumphs to come, Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife Coretta landed in India, in the city then known as Bombay, to visit the land of Mohandas Gandhi, the father of nonviolent protest. They were covered in garlands upon arrival, and the king told reporters, "To other countries I may go as a tourist, but to India I come as a pilgrim." That's what Martin Luther King said. He had long dreamed of going to India, and they stayed an entire month at the invitation of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. King wanted to see for himself the place whose fight for freedom from British rule had inspired his fight for justice in America. He wanted to see the so-called untouchables, the lowest caste in the ancient Indian caste system, whom he had read of and had sympathy for, but who had still been left behind after India gained its independence the decades before. He discovered that people in India had been following the trials of his own oppressed people in America, knew of the bus boycott he had led. Wherever he went, the people on the streets of Bombay and Delhi crowded around him for an autograph. One afternoon, King and his wife journeyed to the southern tip of the country, to the city of Trivandrum in the state of Kerala, and visited with high school students whose families had been untouchables. The principal made the introduction. "Young people," he said, "I would like to present to you a fellow untouchable from the United States of America." King was floored. He had not expected that term to be applied to him. He was, in fact, put off by it at first. He had flown in from another continent, had dined with the prime minister. He did not see the connection, did not see what the Indian caste system had to do directly with him, did not immediately see why the lowest caste people in India would view him, an American Negro and a distinguished visitor, as low caste like himself, see him as one of them. "For a moment," he wrote, "I was a bit shocked and peeved that I would be referred to as an untouchable." Ooh, that's ego right there. Then he began to think about the reality of the lives of the people he was fighting for. 20 million people, consigned to the lowest rank in America for centuries, still smothering in an airtight cage of poverty, quarantined in isolated ghettos, exiled in their own country. And he said to himself, "Yes, I am an untouchable, and every Negro in the United States of America is an untouchable." In that moment, he realized that the land of the free had imposed a caste system not unlike the caste system of India, and that he had lived under that system all his life. It was what lay underneath the forces he was fighting in America. That's it. Ooh, that's it. Harriet Tubman said it. She said, "I could have freed more if only they knew they were slaves." How many of us are operating as slaves mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of that, and don't have a clue? It's so crazy getting to the system of religion and how we were forced to have that too, and forget about where we came from, who we came from, how we were, who we practice, who we worship, what we worship, and how we connected to spirit prior to being forced to and programmed to Christianity or in any other of the sort, and knowing that that system of a religion was transformed and transmuted to benefit that particular dynamic of people. It's so funny how Black people, and I've read this before, but I believe it wholeheartedly. It's so funny how Black people hate everything about slavery except religion. Insanity. Hate everything about slavery. Hate everything about everything it stands for, but hold so true to that religion that they were programmed, which is the binding thing. That's where the conditioning came from, right there. My God, man. Like he said, King had no clue that he himself wasn't untouchable until he thought about it. Like, wait a minute, had the nerve to believe that that wasn't him because he thought he was somebody else and better than. No, no, sir. You're in the same category. I don't care how many people want your autograph. You're fighting the same fight. Okay. What Martin Luther King Jr. recognized about his country that day had begun long before the ancestors of our ancestors had taken their first breaths. More than a century and a half before the American Revolution, a human hierarchy had evolved on the contested soil of what would become the United States. A concept of birthright, the temptation of entitled expansion that was set in motion the world's first democracy, and with it, a ranking of human value and usage. It would twist the minds of men as greed and self-reverence eclipse human conscience to take land in human bodies that the conquering men convinced themselves they had a right to. Listen, if they were to convert this wilderness and civilize it to their liking, they decided they would need to conquer, enslave, and remove the people already on it and transport those they deemed lesser beings to tame and work the land to extract the wealth that lay in the rich soil and shorelines. To justify their plans, they took pre existing notions of their own centrality, reinforced by their self interest interpretations of the Bible. Listen, to justify their plans, they took pre existing notions of their own centrality, reinforced by their self interested interpretation of the Bible, and created a hierarchy of who could do what, who could own what, who was on top, and who was on the bottom, and who was in between. There emerged a ladder of humanity, global in nature, as the upper rung people would descend from Europe with rungs inside that designated the English Protestants at the very top, as their guns and resources would ultimately prevail in the bloody fight over North America. Everyone else would rank in descending order on the basis of their proximity to those deemed most superior. The ranking would continue downward until one arrived at the very bottom. African captives transported to build the new world and to serve the victors for all their days, one generation after the next, for 12 generations. There developed a caste system based upon what people looked like, an internalized ranking, unspoken, unnamed, unacknowledged by everyday citizens, even as they go about their lives adhering to it and acting upon it subconsciously to this day. To this day. Just as the studs and joists and beams that form the infrastructure of a building are not visible to those who live in it, so it is with caste. Its very invisibility is what gives it power and longevity. And though it may move in and out of consciousness, though it may flare and reassert itself in times of upheaval and recede in times of relative calm, it is an ever-present it is an ever-present through line in the country's operation. Caste is not a term often applied to the United States. It is considered the language of India and feudal Europe. But some anthropologists and scholars of race in America have made use of the term for decades. Before the modern era, one of the earliest Americans to take up the idea of caste was the antebellum abolitionist and U.S. Senator Charles Sumner, as he fought against segregation in the North. The separation of children in the public schools of Boston on account of color or race, he wrote, is in the nature of caste, and on this account is a violation of equality. He quoted a fellow humanitarian: caste makes distinctions where God has made none. Listen, caste makes distinctions where God has made none. We cannot fully understand the current upheavals or most any tuning part in American history without accounting for the human pyramid encrypted into us all. The caste system and the attempts to defend, uphold, or abolish the hierarchy underlay the American Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement a century later and pervade the politics of 21st century America. Just as DNA is the code of instructions for cell development, caste is the operating system for economic, political, and social interactions in the United States from the time of its gestation. In 1944, the Swedish economist Gunnar Myrdal and a team of the most talented researchers in the country produced a 2,800-page, two-volume work that is still considered perhaps the most comprehensive study of race in America, An American Dilemma. Myrtle's investigation into race led him to the realization that the most accurate term to describe the workings of American society is not race, but caste. That perhaps it was the only term that addresses what seemed a stubbornly fixed ranking of human value. He came to the conclusion that America had created a caste system and that the effort to maintain the color line has the ordinary white man the function of upholding that caste system itself, of keeping the Negro in his place. The anthropologist Ashley Montagu was among the first to argue that race is a human invention, a social construct, not a biological one, and that in seeking to understand the divisions and disparities in the United States, we have typically fallen into the quicksand and mythology of race. That's it. When we speak of the race problem in America, he wrote in 1942, what we really mean is the caste system and the problems which that caste system creates in America. There was little confusion among some of the leading white supremacists of the previous century as to the connections between India's caste system and that of the American South, where the purest legal caste system existed in the United States. A record of the desperate efforts of the conquering upper classes in India to preserve the purity of their blood persists until this very day in their carefully regulated system of castes, wrote Madison Grant, a popular eugenicist, in his 1962 bestseller, The Passing of the Great Race. In our southern states, Jim Crow cars and social discriminations have exactly the same purpose. A caste system has a way of filtering down to every inhabitant, its codes absorbed like mineral springs, setting the expectations of where one fits on the ladder. The mill worker, with nobody else to look down on, regards himself as eminently superior to the Negro. Observe the Yale scholar Liston Pope in 1942. The colored man represents his last outpost against social oblivion. It was in 1913 that a prominent Southern educator, Thomas Pierce Bailey, took it upon himself to assemble what he called the racial creed of the South. It amounted to the central tenets of the caste system. One of the tenets was, let the lowest white man count for more than the highest Negro. Wow. That same year, a man born to the bottom of India's caste system, born and untouchable in the central provinces, arrived in New York City from Bombay. That fall, Bhimrao Ambedkar came to the United States to study economics as a graduate student of Columbia, focused on the differences between race, caste, and class. Living just blocks from Harlem, he would see firsthand the condition of his counterparts in America. He completed his thesis just as the film Birth of a Nation, the incendiary homage to the Confederate South, premiered in New York City in 1915. He would study further in London and returned to India to become the foremost leader of the Untouchables and a preeminent intellectual who would help draft a new Indian constitution. He would work to dispense with the demeaning term untouchable. He rejected the term Harijans applied to them by Gandhi, patronizingly so that to their minds. He spoke of his people as Dalits, meaning broken people, which due to the caste system they were. It is hard to know what effect his exposure to the social order in America had on him personally. But over the years, he paid close attention, as did many Dalits, to the subordinate caste in America. Indians had long been aware of the plight of enslaved Africans and of their descendants in the pre-Civil War United States. Back in the 1870s, after the end of slavery and during the brief window of Black advancement known as Reconstruction, an Indian social reformer named Jyotiba Phule found inspiration in the abolitionists. He expressed hope that my countrymen may take their noble example as their guide. Many decades later, in the summer of 1946, acting on news that Black Americans were petitioning in the United Nations for protection as minorities, Ambedkar reached out to the best known African American intellectual of the day, W.E.B. Du Bois. He told Du Bois that he had been a student of the Negro problem from across the oceans and recognized their common fates. There is so much similarity between the position of the untouchables in India and the position of the Negroes in America. Ambedkar wrote to Du Bois that the study of the latter is not only natural but necessary. Du Bois wrote back to Ambedkar to say that he was indeed familiar with him and that he had every sympathy with the untouchables of India. It had been Du Bois who seemed to have spoken for the marginalized in both countries as he identified the double consciousness of their existence. And it was Du Bois who, decades before, had invoked an Indian concept in channeling the bitter cry of his people in America. Why did God make an outcast of a stranger in mine own house? I embarked upon this book with a similar desire to reach out across the oceans to better understand how all of this began in the United States. The assigning of meaning to unchangeable physical characteristics, the pyramid passed down through the centuries that defines and directs politics and policies and personal interactions. What are the origins and workings of the hierarchy that intrudes upon daily life and life chances of every American, that had intruded upon my own life with disturbing regularity and consequences? I began investigating the American caste system after nearly 2 decades of examining the history of Jim Crow South, the legal caste system that grew out of slavery and lasted into the early 1970s, within the lifespans of many current day Americans. I discovered while working on The Warmth of the Other Suns that I was not writing about geography and relocation, but about the American caste system, an artificial hierarchy in which most everything that you could and could not do was based upon what you look like and what manifested itself north and south. I had been writing about a stigmatized people, 6 million of them, who were seeking freedom from the caste system in the South, only to discover that the hierarchy followed them wherever they went, much in the way that the shadow of caste, I would soon discover, follows Indians in their own global diaspora. For this book, I wanted to understand the origins and evolutions of classifying and elevating one group of people over another, and the consequences of doing so to the presumed beneficiaries and to those targeted as beneath them. Moving about the world as a living, breathing caste experiment myself, I wanted to understand the hierarchies that I and many millions of people, of others, have had to navigate to pursue our work and dreams. Forgive my dog. To do so meant, for one, looking into the world's most recognized caste system, India's, and examining the parallels, overlaps, and contrasts between one that prevailed in my own country and the original. I also sought to comprehend the molecular, concentrated evil that had produced the caste system imposed in Nazi Germany, and found startling, unsettling connections between the United States and Germany in the decades leading to the Third Reich. Searching the histories of all three hierarchies and poring over a wealth of studies on caste across many disciplines, I began to compile the parallels in a more systematic way and identify the essential shared characteristics of these hierarchies, what I call the 8 pillars of caste, traits disturbingly presented in all of them. Scholars have devoted tremendous energy to studying the Jim Crow caste system, under whose shadow the United States still labors, while others have intensely studied the millennia old caste system of India. Scholars have tended to regard them in isolation, specializing in one or the other. Few have held them side by side, and those who have done so have often been met with resistance. Undeterred by what, for me, became a mission, I sought to dig up the tap roots of hierarchy and the distortions and injustice it yields. Beyond the United States, my research took me to London, Berlin, Dali, and Edinburgh, following the historic threads of the inherited human rank. To further document this phenomenon, I chose to describe the scenes of caste throughout this work, some drawn reluctantly from my own encounters with caste, and others told to me by the people who experienced them and who had intimate knowledge of them. While this book seeks to consider the effects on everyone caught in the hierarchy, it devotes significant attention to the poles of the American caste system. Those at the top, European Americans, who have been its primary beneficiaries, and those at the bottom, African Americans, whose against whom the caste system has directed its full powers of dehumanization. The American caste system began in the years after the arrival of the first Africans to Virginia colony in the summer of 1619, as the colony sought to refine the distinctions of who could be enslaved for life and who could not. Over time, colonial laws granted English and Irish indentured servants greater privileges than the Africans who worked alongside them. Oh, y'all be sure to join us on Tuesday when we break down centers. Over time, colonial laws granted English and Irish indentured servants greater privileges than the Africans who worked alongside them. And the Europeans refused into a new identity, that of being categorized as white, the polar opposite of Black. The historian Kenneth M. Stamp called his assigned of race a caste system, which divided those whose appearances enabled them to claim pure Caucasian ancestry from those whose appearance indicated that some or all of their forebears were Negroes. Members of the Caucasian caste, as he called it, believed in white supremacy and maintained a high degree of caste solidarity to secure it. Thus, throughout this book, you will see many references to the American South, the birthplace of this caste system. The South is where the majority of the subordinate caste was consigned to live for most of the country's history, and for that reason is where the caste system was formalized and most brutally enforced. It was there that the tenets of intercaste relations first took hold before spreading to the rest of the country, leading the writer Alex de Tocqueville to observe in 1831. The prejudice of race appears to be stronger in the states that have abolished slavery than in those where it still exists, and nowhere is it so intolerant as in those states where servitude has never been known. Wow, wow, wow. Again, there's a line that Michael B. Jordan's character, one of his characters, as he played a set of twins, there's a line that he stated towards the beginning of the movie where he stated him and his brother, Smoking Stack, he played a twin, went from the South, Clarksdale, Mississippi, to Chicago. And their younger cousin, Preacher Boy, had asked them, why did they come back? They said, we know the demons here, right? And it's the demons up there we've become familiar with. However, we came back here because we'd rather fight the ones we know. He said Chicago is a number Mississippi with tall buildings instead of plantations. Now, Chicago is not known as a place that had, slavery and things like that. But just like Alexis de Tocqueville stated in 1831, the prejudice of race appears to be stronger in the states that have abolished slavery than in those where it still exists. And nowhere is it so intolerant as in those states where servitude has never been known. To recalibrate how we see ourselves, I use language that may be more commonly associated with people in other cultures to suggest a new way of understanding our hierarchy: dominant caste, ruling majority, favorite caste, or upper caste instead of or in addition to white, middle caste instead of or in addition to Asian or Latino, subordinate caste, lowest caste, bottom caste, disfavored caste, historically stigmatized instead of African American, original, conquered, or indigenous peoples instead of or in addition to Native American, marginalized people in addition to or instead of women of any race or minorities of any kind. Some of this may sound like a foreign language. In some ways, it is, and it's meant to be. Because to truly understand America, We must open our eyes to the hidden work of a caste system that has gone unnamed but prevails among us in our collective detriment, to see that we have more in common with each other and with cultures that we might otherwise dismiss, and to summon the courage to consider that therein may lie the answers. In embarking upon this work, I devoured books about caste in India and in the United States. Anything with the word caste in it lit up my neurons. I discovered kindred spirits from the past, sociologists, anthropologists, ethnographers, writers, whose work carried me through time and across generations. Many had labored against the tide, and I felt that I was carrying on a tradition that was not walking alone. In the midst of the research, word of my inquiry spread to some Indian scholars of caste based here in America. They invited me to speak at an inaugural conference on caste and race at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, the town where W.E.B. Du Bois was born and where his papers are kept. There, I told the audience that I had written a 600-page book about the Jim Crow era in the American South, the time of naked white supremacy, but that the word racism did not appear anywhere in the narrative. I told them that after spending 15 years studying the topic and hearing the testimony of the survivors of the era, I realized that the term was insufficient. Caste was the more accurate term, and I set out to them the reasons why. They were both stunned and heartened. The plates of Indian food kindly set before me at the reception, therefore, sat cold due to the press of questions and the sharing that went into the night. At a closing ceremony that I had not been made aware of ahead of time, the host presented to me a bronze-colored bust of the patron saint of the lowborn of India, Bhimrao Ambedkar, the Dalit leader who had written to Du Bois all those decades before. It felt like an initiation into a caste to which I had somehow always belonged. Over and over, they shared scenarios of what they had endured, and I responded in personal recognition, as if even to anticipate some particular turn or outcome. To their astonishment, I began to be able to tell who was highborn and who was lowborn among the Indian people among us, not from what they look like, as one might in the United States, but on the basis of the universal human response to hierarchy. In the case of an upper caste person, an inescapable certitude in bearing, demeanor, and behavior, a visible expectation of centrality. After one session, I went up to a woman presenter whose caste I had ascertained from observing her interactions. I noticed that she had reflexively stood over the Dalit speaker and had taken it upon herself to explain what the Dalit woman had just said or meant, to take a position of authority as if by second nature, perhaps without realizing it. We chatted a bit, and then I said to her, "I believe you must be upper caste, are you not?" She looked crestfallen. "How did you know?" She said, "I try so hard." We talked for what seemed an hour more, and I could see the effort it took to manage the unconscious signals of encoded superiority, the presence of mind necessary to counteract the programming of caste. I could see how hard it was, even for someone committed to healing the caste divide, who was, as it turned out, married to a man from the subordinate caste and who was deeply invested in egalitarian ideals. On the way home, I was snapped back to my own world when airport security flagged my suitcase for inspection. The TSA worker happened to be an African American who looked to be in his early 20s. He strapped on latex gloves to begin his work. He dug through my suitcase and excavated a small box, unwrapped the folds of paper, and held in his palm the bust of Ambedkar that I had been given. "This is what came up in the x-ray," he said. It was heavy like a paperweight. He turned it upside down and inspected it from all sides. His gaze lingered at the bottom of it. He seemed concerned that something might be inside. "I'll have to swipe it," he warned me. He came back after some time and declared it okay, and I could continue with it on my journey. He looked at the bespectacled face, okay, with the receding hairline and steadfast expression, and seemed to wonder why I would be carrying what looked like a totem from another country. So who is this? He asked. The name Ambakar alone would not have registered. I had learned of him myself only the year before, and there was no time to explain the parallel caste system. So I blurted out what seemed to make the most sense. Oh, I said, this is the Martin Luther King Jr. of America. Pretty cool, he said, satisfied now and seeming a little proud. He then wrapped Ambakar back up as if he were king himself and sat him back gently into the suitcase. Wow. He at the airport in that country, not even knowing who that was, which says right there that it's not being discussed. Not at all. It's not being discussed. It's not being shared. It's just like the history here. It's just like the history here. I've, I've even in my own bloodline, I have inquired from some of my elders to please write down or share your story. Share the stories. Talk. I don't understand why it's so hard. I don't understand why it's so hard. Share. They are wiping out our history, people, in the books and literatures and things like that. But again, you cannot erase blood. So if there's still elders here, right? Talk to your people. Talk about your family history so that your family can understand their origins. Good, bad, and ugly. Seriously, I really do not, for the life of me, don't understand how it is so hard to share the workings of the family within the family. And then we want to have selective outrage when someone out from the outside of the bloodline comes in and strip us of our history and books, and we want to pick it and everything. But you're stripping your own family of the history by not telling the history story. Come on. There's no way in the world that young man who lives in the country did not know who that statue was. No way. Just like our people here, we should know. We should know. But just like a scripture in the Bible says, the people perish for the lack of knowledge. You know how we've been able to be overthrown and overtaken? Because no one is educating. No one is educating. I talked about this. My son's 14th birthday was April 24th, a couple days ago. My son is not here. He's in spirit. He was born and then he transitioned right after. Okay. I talked about, and this is no blaming, no guilt, no anything, but these are facts here, right? I talked about how that was my first pregnancy. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea. I knew to get the OBGYN. We had our check-ins. If you carried a child, they do lab work all the time. So yes, my OBGYN should have called it. However, they didn't. Okay. And it happens, right? Unfortunately, it happens. So I'm carrying my son, getting bigger and bigger. And then before you know it, at around month 6, I start feeling these incredible pains, like horrible pains. I'm at work, which, required me to stand quite a bit, walk back and forth quite a bit. And the longer I go throughout my day, I'm just in excruciating pain to the point where I have to sit, not knowing what was going on. So at the time I was married, and so I had to call my then husband and be sent to the ER. There, the doctor said, "Oh my goodness, you are 1 centimeter dilated." Mind you, I'm 6 months. So she said, "Your body is trying to push your baby out." My body was trying to do this because my body and the blood type that I have, which is I'm AB negative before pregnancy, you RH negative while you're pregnant. When you're, all of this is the education that I received at the ER, okay? Education I received, guess what I'm saying? Education I received at the ER, okay? I was told I'm Rh negative, which means any mother who is expecting a child who's Rh negative, you're supposed to be administered a RhoGAM shot. I had never heard of such a thing. Mind you, I was never pregnant before, okay? She issued me my first RhoGAM shot. She says, you were supposed to take this upon first pregnancy test, and then every 6 weeks after that. And the last being administered right after the baby is born. I was 6 months pregnant already, and I was getting my first shot. Shortly after, maybe about a month or so after, is when I delivered my son prematurely, and he transitioned afterwards. Why? Because the doctor did the autopsy and told me why. Not to mention, I lost my pulse 3 times during that delivery. Why? Because apparently, I was given that RhoGAM shot way too late. By the time I was given the shot, the infection had already set in the membrane around the baby. So the RhoGAM shot at that point, that late in the game, was way too late, was doing nothing at all. And when I mentioned it to my family, I got the story back. Oh yeah. Oh, I had to take that too. Excuse me? What do you mean? Oh yeah, I had to take that shot with all y'all. Yeah, it would have been nice to know that. Because, you know, when you go to the doctor, one of the questions that your doctor is going to ask you is, does certain things run in your family? Does it run in your bloodline? And if you don't know anything, because God forbid your bloodline communicates anything, okay? If you don't know anything, you're going to answer that question by saying, oh no, none of this goes, no, none of this. Oh no, that's not, no, we don't have that in the family. No, we don't have, when it's been all up and through your family. Okay? We're joined by blood. Blood. So if the blood and the story of the blood is not shared, how will we honestly be able to answer those questions and get the proper steps to take if the blood is not sharing the story of the blood? You know how many things, not only could my son have been here, okay? Now, granted, I've accepted the fact that he's not here. Wish that he was, you know, because I would love to be a present mama, you know, with my child with me, 14 years old. My son would be going into high school come next year. But I couldn't. I was kind of robbed of that because of lack of knowledge. You see the importance of it? That's how important it is to share the story of the blood. That's how important it is. What if somebody's struggling with something, with a mental matter? And you never know that all through the bloodline, many people in your family's history also struggle with that. You think it's something to share? Yes. What if there's a certain thing, just whatever it is, it's in the blood. But for some reason, we still have this enslaved mentality. No, shh, don't you say that. No, we don't talk about that. Oh, no. Oh, no. You got to be a good Negro, because Massa we gonna get in trouble. Are you kidding me? But we want to claim free all the time. We want to claim freedom when you're still mentally in shackles. You're still emotionally in shackles. Your tongue is in shackles. Come on now. Come on now. You can't even be free in your home, in your own family, because your family insists on remaining enslaved. Again, Harriet Tubman said, I could have freed more of them if they only knew they were a slave. Because God only knows. If they only knew they were a slave. There's many of us walking around here that are still enslaved and never had a shackle on our ankle or our feet or our neck, but are enslaved 100%. And got the nerve to be angry with somebody that's free. Because again, she could have freed more if they only knew they were slaves. Matter of fact, it's a couple of them that Harriet Tubman, if you know her story, it's a couple, she had to kill a couple of them because they were so enslaved and thinking that while being enslaved, that they were having a good time and being taken care of by a good master. They were the ones that was running to try to tell the enslavers that she was trying to free them. Come on. I really, really invite and urge you all to go watch the movie Centers. Because it wasn't just the outside folks that was the vampires. It was some of the inside folks that got pulled in and conditioned by the outside folks that tried to kill from the inside out. Because they were so programmed. Man, listen. We cannot heal what we refuse to reveal. So if you want to sit in your fog, in the world that you created or been conditioned to believe, you go right ahead. But understand that you just might be there by yourself. You just might be there by yourself. It's ludicrous to me. But we gotta face it. We gotta confront it. We gotta call it out. We gotta call it out. We gotta put a name on it. It transcends race and racism. It goes to the whole system, caste system. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the only reason that it's taken place and that it has held true for so many years and so long, and the system has just gotten worse. And we're looking where we're sitting today. Look at the climate of the atmosphere that we're in right now. This is real, people. And instead of sitting back and laying docile, I love the Ryan Coogler's and the Ava DuVernays of entertainment. Call it out. In the name of entertainment, call it out. Put it in plain sight. I love Kendrick Lamar for what he did. Put it in plain sight. Dare them to say something. Kendrick Lamar's stage was facing Donald Trump's his square, his suite, facing him, performing, and giving him the message pretty much in your face. That's the revolution that's being televised right now. You have people that are brave and that are utilizing their gifts to give the message and to emancipate. 100%. That's what it means to use and tap into the creative pool of the creator when it doesn't look like somebody else's. That's what breath of fresh air looks like. This is not sampling. This is not remixing. This is freshness. Because that's the beauty of being a creator. When you're connected to the creator of all. You can tap into that creative genius and create while informing, create while freeing, create while enlightening, create while elevating. Come on now. This is where we are. Pluto and Aquarius action, 100%. And it's daring us to remember. That's the message of it all. Remember who you are. Remember who you were before you were conditioned to believe you were somebody and something else. Now that's a revolution right there. That is a rebellion. Going against the conditioning, going against the programming, and actually doing your homework on yourself. How about that? Doing your homework on yourself, doing the homework on your blood and where you came from. How about that? Not even asking you to go beyond your bloodline. No. Do the homework of your bloodline and see where you derive from so you can return back to where you came from. So you can start and go back to your genesis and dispel some of the stuff that you've been programmed to believe about yourself. Get to your freedom. Get to your freedom. Get to yourself. Return to your center. That's what it means right there. That's what it means right there. I love it here. When I tell you I love it here, I love it here, and I love. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the necessity that we even have to be here. But I love to be able to be a part of and to witness this revolution. Oh, absolutely. This today that we're living in right now is the modern day Jim Crow. We weren't around. My generation wasn't around for Jim Crow. My mom and them, they were kids during Jim Crow, especially in the South. My mama is born in Clarksdale, Mississippi. In the deep South, the deep Delta. What we're experiencing and living in today, what we see today, this is modern day Jim Crow. Now, what are we going to do about it? That's the question. What are we going to do about it? That is the question. And that's only going to be answered by you. Period. We are living and breathing here on this planet in this time for a reason. We are. There are duties, there's responsibilities that are on us. And it's not just to sit pretty, collect a check. That ain't what we're here to do. Okay? Whether it's within your family, within your community, within your state, your city, your county, your nation, you are here on assignment. But in order for you to get there, you have to identify who you are first. Do that. That's assignment number one. Return to your center. Return to yourself. Understand who you are. And then from that place of knowing and that place of alignment with yourself as yourself, then you go out into all the world. That's what you do. But you can't do it if you don't know who you are. Because what are you going to tell them? Pray tell. What exactly is the messaging that you're going to give them when you are confused about who you are and where you come from? It's time. It's past time. Stop playing with this thing and get to your port. Get to your station. And get busy. Get busy. Activate yourself as yourself, not what you pretend to be, not who you can fake and funk and perform for. No. Because once the performance is over and the curtain falls, you're left with yourself. Who is that? Who's standing there? When the makeup comes off When the costumes are taken off and you're back in plain clothes, who's standing there? That's what needs to be. That's what needs to be discovered right there. Yeah, it's time. It's past time. We're gonna continue this work here. You all, if you need the book, we just finished chapter 3. We're still on part 1. I believe it's several parts to the book. So you want this book? You want to get your reading material? It is free. It is free. FREE. It is free to you. Okay. Yes, we are a nonprofit organization, 501c3. Yes, 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 we are. And we do accept donations for the work that we do all the time. However, donations, although they are welcome, they are not required for you to receive your free material. Okay. You can email me, info@biancamissblee.com. Again, info@biancamissblee.com, or wherever you're listening from, you can send me a message with an email address that you want me to send the copy of to you. I will send it personally to you. Okay. Visit my website, you all. It is biancamissblee.com. Again, it's biancamissblee.com. For those on Clubhouse, you can just simply tap above my head and you'll be right there. Okay. Follow me on social media, you all: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, and wherever you go. I am Dr. Bianca Miss Lee. Okay. Dr. Bianca Miss Lee. Listen, we'll be back here on Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with the next chapters. Okay. I'm only going to do one chapter on Tuesday because it's already in the evening. Okay. So that chapter is, the next section is an invisible program. Okay. So I'm not sure if that's a chapter though. Hold on. Let's see. An invisible program. Ah. Okay. So let me go ahead and read that now. I think that's the latter part of the section that we just read, because we're going into part 2 next time. Okay, so let me read that. An invisible program. In the imagination of 2 late 20th century filmmakers, an unseen force of artificial intelligence has overtaken the human species, has managed to control humans in an alternate reality in which everything one sees, feels, hears, tastes, smells, touches is in an actuality a program. There are programs within programs, and humans become not just programmed, but are in danger of, and in fact, well on their way to becoming nothing more than programs. What is reality and what is a program morph into one? The interlocking program passes for life itself. The great quest in the film series, The Matrix, involves those humans who awaken to this realization as they search for a way to escape their entrapment. Those who accept their programming get to lead deadened surface lives enslaved to a semblance of reality. They are captives, safe on the surface, as long as they are unaware of their captivity. Woo, listen. They are captives, safe on the surface, as long as they are unaware of their captivity. Perhaps it is the unthinking acquiescence, I believe, the blindness to one's imprisonment that is the most effective way for human beings to remain captive. Listen, the blindness of one's imprisonment. I could have freed more if only they knew they were slaves. The blindness of one's imprisonment that is the most effective way for human beings to remain captive. People who do not know that they are captive will not resist their bondage. People who do not know that they are captive will not resist their bondage. But those who awaken to their captivity threaten the hum of the matrix. Any attempt to escape their imprisonment risks detection, signals a breach in the order, exposes the artifice of unreality that has been imposed upon human beings. The matrix, the unseen master program fed by the survival instincts of an automated collective, does not react well to threats to its existence. In a crucial moment, a man who has only recently awakened to the program in which he and his species are ensnared consults a wise woman, the oracle, who it appears could guide him. He is uncertain and wary as he takes a seat next to her on a park bench that may or may not be real. She speaks in code and metaphor. A flock of birds alights on the pavement beyond them. See those birds, the oracle says to him. At some point, a program has written to govern them. See those birds? At some point, a program was written to govern them. She looks up and scans the horizon. A program was written to watch over the trees and the wind, the sunrise and sunset. There are programs running all over the place. Some of these programs go without notice, so perfectly attuned they are to their task, so deeply embedded in the drone of existence. The ones doing their job, she tells him, doing what they were meant to do, are invisible. You never even know they were here. So too with the caste system as it goes about its work in silence, the string of a puppet master unseen by those whose subconscious it directs. Its instructions and intravenous drip to the mind, cast in the guise of normalcy, injustice looking just, atrocities looking unavoidable to keep the machinery humming. The matrix of caste as a facsimile for life itself, and those purpose is maintaining the primacy of those hoarding and holding tight to power. Listen, I could have freed more if only they knew they were slaves. On Tuesday, we'll begin part 2, which is entitled The Arbitrary Construction of Human Division. Starting with chapter 4, a long-running play and the emergence of caste in America. Until next time, you all, I love you. I mean it. There is absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. I will see you back here on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Voices of Empowerment. Peace. Thank you.